So physicalism implies that you are all experiences from their own intrinsic processes specifying those experiences. That's what you are. So therefore you are all experiences that ever happened, and time is an illusion in a non-trivial sense. So if that's true, why would cryonics matter? Or why would anything whatsoever matter? So I'm not going to get into convincing you about the moral value of things, but I am going to try to still rescue a sense of why you would want to do cryonics anyway, even if continuity of consciousness is not an actual thing. Because from a physicalist perspective, experiences just exist where they exist, and therefore you are no more some future experience than you are some experience happening in some other person or happening in some conscious AI that is really far away, space-like separated from you, etc. So there's no physical difference between one kind of difference and the other kind of difference. So there's no one actually traveling anywhere, no matter how much it feels like that. Nonetheless, we assume that we are for the sake of achieving goals. So what we're trying to do is to be a person right here, right? Your mind, which has a certain goal at this moment. And so you might have the goal, I want to find Lindsay. Like, that's my goal. So once I get to this mind state, which contains the state found Lindsay, then I am happy. And therefore, what I'm going to try to do is evaluate all the possible choices that I have in my future and assign conditional probabilities, and therefore move based on those conditional probabilities. So in other words, I take all the information that I have, all the knowledge from my past, and I rationally try to predict what are the best choices that I can make given a rational system and knowledge. So based on that, imagine that we have like the prediction that this is a 33% chance for all of them to get me to the state found Lindsay. Those are my conditional probabilities on these actions. So they're the same, so I might as well just use a quantum random number generator and just pick one of the three, and it ends up being the case that I actually do pick all three. So a third of my being goes in this direction, and a third in this direction. By being, I don't actually mean this continuity of consciousness, because the idea of continuity of consciousness is confused in the first place. So for example, you can insert an experience right now that's the most random experience ever, and then just delete it completely, and how would I know that I hadn't experienced that between parsing these words? I couldn't. So if I just experienced being you right now and then forgot all about it, it's as if it never happened, right? So the continuity of consciousness is not the issue. The issue is not where does my sort of stream of consciousness, where does my soul go? I'm assuming that's a confusion, and that there is no more difference between this moving here and this moving to some other person over here, which has their own goals and is like thinking that it's moving in some other direction. In fact, no one is really moving in any direction, but the mind states all already exist, and you can just become more rational or less rational from any given location. And that's really the extent of it all in a real sense. So say you do this, right? And so then now you have the mass of your goal achieving mines in 3 separate locations. And then from this location, they begin to bifurcate again. And now they have attained different knowledge. And so this one has different probabilities. Maybe this one has like a 50-50, and this one has a 60-40, and this one has like a 90-10 of, you do this choice, you have a 90% chance of finding Lindsay. You do this choice, you have a 10% chance. So this one goes in this direction because they're being rational about it, and it turns out they were actually describing a fact about reality. They weren't being deluded, they were being rational, they had sufficient knowledge to the point where this 90% chance actually made sense. So now they're here, and what the only thing this means is they will now dump a larger amount of experiential mass into the state of found Lindsay, after they get here. Whereas someone who went in some other direction, say this person went in this direction, and then it went downhill, and then they just went into a sort of dead end where they have no possibilities. They've reduced their chances of ever finding Lindsay. So maybe there's like a 1% chance and like a 0.5% chance, and there's really nothing else you could do. And there's just like a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of chance that you could do anything to find Lindsay. And, to make matters worse, you pick this one, and then, at some point it's impossible. Your any choice, like your range of freedom has been constrained to the point that you don't even have the choice of finding Lindsay anymore. You've forgotten your mission completely, and there's no way to rescue you at that point. Say you were just, like shot in the head or something, and you've got no chance at that point. Experience is still going to continue from wherever experience exists. It just means that you're not going to dump a lot of experiential mass into the goal, into the state, found Lindsay, which was his original goal. But a whole bunch of, his causal continuity ends up in a whole bunch of different areas. So goals are important only insofar as they are instantiated by rational agents that have high amounts of intelligence, high amounts of knowledge, high amount of rationality, and therefore they can better achieve their goals. And that's it. It's really just, you can define a self in terms of goals. You can't really define a self in terms of where are, causal continuity vectors pushing my soul. Because in fact, there are no souls. There's just the sum soul, which is everywhere it is. All experiences are where they are, and none of them understand that they are also in the other locations. And so you might think, well, if from one location a fragment of my being knows about open individualism, knows that he is all experiences, why doesn't he set up like a prediction market in which he bets that he's immortal against the more naive fragments of the sum soul? And the reason that doesn't work, the reason Russian roulette doesn't work, is because at the ultimate level, the big I still just obeys the laws of physics. So it's the Born rule. There are greater infinities than others, and so you're still capable of being degraded. So most of the time, you are going to just get shot in the head when you play Russian roulette, which means you're going to go in these directions, where you lose your computational specificity and you lose your goals most of the time. So you're actually dumping more experiential mass into places where you don't get the payout, even though some versions of you will get the payout, but it's going to be tiny, tiny amounts. So taking into account the probabilities is the only thing you could really do if you're playing this game.
Just cheese.